Olá, seja bem-vindo ao XamasConet, Congresso Internacional de Xamanismo na internet. Agora você assistirá a palestra Sabedoria, daquele que anda com o Trovão, com Vernon Foster, uma das grandes lideranças indígenas atuais nos Estados Unidos. É um dançarino do sol e guardião da Chanumpa. Se especializou em trazer cura e equilíbrio para as energias das pessoas através da execução de extrações xamânicas e levando modelos de suor. Seu nome indígena Lakota é Wakia Un Manee, que significa aquele que anda com o trovão. Tivemos problemas técnicos na gravação do vídeo, conseguimos salvar somente o áudio, mas não podíamos deixar de fora a sabedoria compartilhada por essa grande liderança nativa. Lembre-se, papel e caneta na mão, tablet ou celular para fazer suas anotações. Aproveite também e se inscreva no nosso canal, curta e compartilhe o link deste vídeo com seus amigos. Essa é uma das formas de você apoiar positivamente esse projeto. Que as melhores energias cheguem até você. Fique agora com a fala inspiradora de Vernon Foster.
XamasConet, primeiro Congresso Internacional de Xamanismo na internet. Arrou, Metacuye Oiassim, por todas as nossas relações.
Well, first of all, I think ceremony makes a connection with not only the natural elements, but ceremony can also connect the people. So I think it's a vital resource that has always been with mankind, but in many places it was not allowed to continue that practice. And now that we've begun to reestablish the practice, I think people are starting to see that it's an important source of reconnection. Oh God. I grew up in a period of time where the culture was pretty much still banned. We were not allowed to dance or speak the language, or anything that connected us to be an indigenous people was not permitted. I was removed at a very young age from my natural parents and placed in many various homes, and they were not Indian homes, so I kind of grew up learning the other side of the tracks, if you will. It was a very tough childhood, not even allowed to practice our ways, so my mother and father became very bad alcoholics, in which I grew up with a lot of dysfunction. Yes, that's very important to me, and I think that's my personal connection to giving back, to be a success from the dysfunction that I came from. I could have very easily went a different direction. Well, it's a variety of things. First of all, now that we have, since 1977, have regained the freedom to be the people that we were, we've been able to establish schools in and off the reservation. These are schools that teach in academia, but also a connection to the culture. So we have culture classes where our kids attend school for the academics, and then they spend part of the time learning about the culture. One of the best teachers is involving our children in our dances, in our ceremonies, and to reestablish the hands-on interest in what our culture really was. So school is a big part of it, but allowing our children to come to the ceremonies and become a part of it, no matter what extent, how large a role or small a role they may play. Kids as young as 2 or 3 years old are allowed to be there in ceremony. Oftentimes they just go to sleep or go play, but they'll sit and they'll listen to the stories and then they'll go play and they'll come back and forth, but they're being introduced to the culture, and that's a very important role for us adults to include our children, because in many cultures we push our children away and we say, oh, the adults are doing, the adults are talking, go play, go find something to do, we're going to talk. You know, Indian culture, we don't do that, so our children are directly involved. Well, I was given that name a while back, and it's Wakia Un Manee, which translates into thunder. He walks with. That is the native name that I use in traditional circles. Well, a lot of it's through observation. Your character, they watch how you carry yourself, what you do in the community, how you are as a person, the morals, the values, standards that you live by. It all contributes to a name given. Since my name was given to me at a later age, which we usually do at a very young age, we go through ceremony, but it was a informal ceremony that I was given that name. That's a nice question. I mean, the reason I say it's nice is because there in Brazil you have many indigenous cultures in the forest. And when I was spending time with the people there, I saw a healthy people that were on the verge of, I won't say becoming sick, but the possibility was there. Our people in the United States, we lead the nation in diabetes. And this is due to cultural change, due to the different kind of foods that the government handed out and forced us to eat, what we call the commodity program, where we get government rations. So we lead the nation in many of the diseases. So what was so refreshing to me was to come to Brazil and to see a group of natives that hasn't yet been influenced by that. But the possibility is there as more and more visitors begin to come into the villages, and even some of the villagers coming off of the village and buying, you know, foods that are not in nutritious value. So I think disease is very an important part. We've taken the leadership in discovering some of these diseases in America, whereas the medical field and many other professional organizations, if you will, wanted to overlook these things. Fetal alcohol syndrome was discovered by native people. The diabetes that we face today, we're doing something about it, because if we're leading the nation, that means many of our people are affected.
Yeah.
In the 1800s, in the later 1800s, there's close to 137 million Indian people in the United States. Since since that period of time, today we are 2.5 million. And we're going to be lessened if we do not do things to prevent the diseases and the things that are affecting our people today. The natives of Brazil, they have an opportunity not to become sick like we had become sick. What we call the Chanumpa, you know, when we use the word pipe, we try to refrain using words that have a English connotation to them. So we refer to it as the Chanumpa. And it is probably the most sacred, it is the most sacred prayer device that our native people have. So we use the Chanumpa in all the ceremonies, and it comes from the sacred stone, and there's a whole story around that. But the most important thing is that it is held in such reverence that signing of the treaties, they always brought the Chanumpa, and the Chanumpa was like for a common man to put his hand on the Bible and I say, I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. That's what Indian people were saying when they carried that Chanumpa. You cannot lie holding that Chanumpa. And so under the 475 treaties that had been signed by the U.S. government, native people, even up to this day, have never broken one of those treaties because it was signed with the Chanumpa in hand. That's how sacred it is to us. Well, first of all, the sun dance is a dance of life. And it's a very manly dance with a lot of female symbolism. The sacred tree of life is rooted into the earth. The rope that is used is the umbilical cord. When we pierce the skin, that is the blood that is lost during childbirth. We wear a skirt. We wear bracelets and anklets and crowns made of sage. We use a whistle that is attached to that whistle is the breath feather, the feather of the woman. So it's a very strong male dance with a lot of female symbolism. Yes, because if it wasn't for our women, we wouldn't be doing the sun dance. We wouldn't be doing the sweat lodges. We wouldn't be doing our ceremonies, because there was a time, like I was saying earlier, that it was completely banned, and our women took it underground. And in 1977, the passing of the Native American Freedom Religious Act allowed us to reestablish our ways, our cultural ways, and in so doing, our women brought the ceremonies back and said, these belong to you, you need to begin to start doing them again. And so out of appreciation, the women were allowed to come and participate in all the ceremonies once again, and that was our way of giving thanks for them hiding our ceremonies and keeping them alive. Well, the Sweat Lodge is for community healing, and today it is still active in the Native community. In fact, in all of our prisons, our federal prisons, our state prisons, our rehabilitation programs, our drug addiction programs, our women abuse programs, our youth programs, there's a sweat lodge. Now we even have sweat lodges outside of major hospitals. Good Samaritan in Phoenix has a sweat lodge outside. just recently, the National Association, not Native American, but the National Association of Veterans, they realized the best way to deal with post-war syndrome was through the sweat lodge. It was a place that we would go and purify ourselves. We would bring hot stones into the little frame that we would make. That little frame represents Mother Earth, and so when we go into it, it is pure dark, like as if we were returning to the womb of our mother. So there's a whole concept, there's a whole story behind that sweat lodge. So it's more than just a weekend activity or a weekend workshop. For us, it was a place of community healing. Oftentimes we say people go to church to talk about God. We go into the sweat lodge to talk to God. And that's what we're doing through the stones and through the songs and the speaking. So it is a very reverent place. If you want to equate it, I would say the sweat lodge is our church. Again, most of the things that we use as Native people have stories around it, the beginning, the resources in which we were given these things. The drum in the circle represents the four elements of life. That circle itself represents the circle of life. So, for an example, if you hold a drum up and you look at it, intellectually you would see a drum. I would see a drum. But if you begin to look at it intuitively, within that circle of that drum, you begin to see the four elements of life. First, the four directions, the north, east, south, and west. Then you would see the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Then you would see man, infancy, teenager, adult, and senior. Then you would see our inner needs, our social need, our emotional need, our physical need, and our spiritual need. The sun is round, the moon is round, the stars are round, the planets are round. So everything evolves in that circle. So the drum to us, it is a tool, not an instrument. It is a tool that it is used to send our voices out into that universe for the healing of others. So, like I have drums, but they don't belong to me. They belong to the people. And the songs that were sung on the drums belongs to the people. And of course, that belongs to Creator. So, like I was saying, when you begin to break down our culture, all these things have a significant role in what has established our culture. So the drum is a sacred tool, not an instrument. If you pound on it to rock music or any other kind of music, then it's just the instrument. But if you sing the songs, the sacred songs, and use that drum in sacred ceremonies, then it becomes a sacred tool. As human beings, oftentimes we are forgetful. And sometimes we even forget the path in which we walk. And so the medicine bag is a hindrance of a reminder. In other words, when a person wears a medicine bag, the contents is only known to him and Creator. He receives the contents from maybe a stone that he has connected with, or a feather, or something precious that has great meaning to him. But it was also a spiritual reminder. When you went to the river to bathe, you had to remove your medicine bag. Anytime today you wear a medicine bag and you shower, you got to remove your medicine bag. When you brush your hair, it gets in the way. So it's kind of a reminder of this path that we walk. It holds no power, but it holds sacred remnants. Up until 1968, Native people were being mistreated on the streets. We went through two relocations. One, we was relocated to a reservation off the free land. When the numbers got so big on the reservation, because there were so many native inhabitants, they established another relocation program, and they began to take Indians off the reservation and put them in the cities, promising them jobs, education. That never happened. But in that process, Native people were being abused on the streets by law enforcement, by others through racism. And so the first development of the American Indian movement started in 1968 on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis. And it became known as AIM Patrol, whereas we would begin to patrol the streets, and we would have tape recorders and notepads and cameras, and any time, and we had scanners, so we knew when people were being arrested, we would go to that location and we'd document, because at that time, Native people were being thrown in the trunks of the police cars and taken down to the river and beaten, and then they would be taken to jail. So in 1968, the American Indian movement became a forefront of stopping this abuse, and through that it started to just expand. When people heard about what the American Indian movement was doing, pretty soon they were involved in fishing rights. Pretty soon they were involved in land rights and water rights, and it expanded to even to the reservation, where corruption was taking place on the reservation. So the American Indian movement became the first, I don't like to use the word civil rights, but it became the first civil rights movement for Native people. And it's the only movement that has been kept alive. The Black Panthers, they fell by the wayside and they had to be reestablished. But the American Indian movement is something that has lasted since 1968. Today, we are still active on the forefront. And today, the movement has expanded to not just the American Indian movement, but now you have chapters and arms of the American Indian movement. So you have Idle No More, you have the Women of Red Nations, and you have all these organizations branching off that were birthed by the American Indian movement. Aho is a Lakota expression. It is a male expression. It's kind of funny, because as I travel around the world, I hear that term being used by both men and women. And when I hear women say this, I know that there was a man someplace that taught them these things. So aho is like a finalization, where a man would say, "Aho, I have spoken. The words I have said, this is the way it is to be." So it was a male expression. And us men, we have an ego. And so we seek recognition. And on a spiritual aspect of it, aho became more of a egotistical type of phrase. But it really isn't. But it was just a phrase that the men would use in addressing the council or addressing each other. Someplace that changed, and women started to use that term as well. Not in the Indian community, outside of the Indian community. Women our native women, they know their role, and they have a language, they have ceremonies of their own, so they don't need to borrow or take any expressions or any of the men's ceremony. They have theirs, and it's respected by both genders. So aho became a universal phrase that was picked up someplace, maybe the movies, I don't know. Women have their gentleness and their humbleness. For them, it was a physical gesture. It was just a delicate nod of the head. They would just nod their head in agreement or acceptance. Well, that, you have to remember that in our country, we have 567 different Indian tribes in the United States. And each one has their own stories, their languages, and their beliefs. So in some tribes, they believe in reincarnation. There's never reincarnation of coming back as another nationality. You come back as an Indian, but you come back to fulfill a role that was not complete, or if a man was abusive to a woman, he would come back as an Indian woman. Some tribes believe that you come back as an animal. So it varies from different tribes. In the songs, see, we have categories. We have social songs that are sung to bring enlightenment to people during the social dances, to help them to feel good, to have joy and have laughter. So all the songs have a spiritual connection. But as Native people, we don't always focus on the spiritual aspects of it, because you can't walk around being holy 24 hours a day. You have to enjoy life, and that's the beauty of the balance. So our social songs, they have a spiritual connection, but they're used socially. So we have songs that are humorous. We have songs that bring laughter and joy. Our ceremonial songs are raw words of prayer. Each one of those songs is connecting with Creator in some form. So there is not an Indian song that doesn't have that spiritual connection. So singing is very important to the healing. And even today, when you look at contemporary singers, people can sing a song that can make people feel sad. They can sing a song that makes people happy. And that's the way it is with the Indian songs. They're meant to induce feelings in people, healing. That's why you have to be careful in what you say or how you say it, how you sing songs, because you can help people or you can hurt people. So all of the songs have the word, what we would call, or what you might call God, but in the languages of the native people. So all of the traditional spiritual songs have that connection with Creator. Oaxaca is a Lakota word, comes from the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota people. Oaxaca is sacred. The first part, Oaxaca, is sacred. Tunka is big. Indian people, we don't have a perception of what God is. And we have no interest in what God is. We accept this spiritual deity that is bigger than us, and we refer to that deity as a mystery. So when we talk about Wakia Un, we're talking about the big mystery above us. Well, first of all, in many of the native language, there is no word for love. Love for us had to be shown. How you treat your brother, how you treat your sister, how you treat your mother or your grandmother, your aunties, your uncles, your nieces and nephews. It goes beyond humanness. How you treat trees, which are life. How you treat flowers, the medicine, are life. How you treat the river. How you treat all things of creation. So love was a word that it was introduced to the native people, but soon got exploited. You know, like in today's society, you can tell your companion, you can tell each other how much you love each other, and then you could look out the window and say, oh, I love my new car. Well, that new car can't love you back. We can tell our children, oh, I love you, darling, I love you so much, and then turn around and hit them. So for the native people, like many English words, love has become exploited and lost its origin. So in the Indian culture, love, that word does not exist. It was all through actions. The element of nature. First, native people, we have always had and has never lost the connection of the natural elements. We understood the language of the tree. We understood the language of the river. We understood the language of the stones because they spoke our language. And that language is of the heart. And so we recognize the beauty in those simple elements. And we recognize the power. First of all, let's go to water. Water is life. Without water, everything, including us, would perish on this earth. Water is sacred. Water is the woman's element. That is the woman's medicine. She carries water. So each one of us, even men, before we were born, we were encased inside of our mother in that bubble of water. And as soon as that water broke and touched the earth, new life would come forth. Just like the rain. When the rain touches the earth, new life blossoms and comes forth. So water is sacred. And this is how we see the other elements, the trees, the ones that bend over us and make the sweat lodge, the ones we use for the canoes. We have a connection and appreciation for that tree given of itself so that we can have these things. Even the simple table in your living room is made from a tree that was living out in the wilderness someplace. So we never lost that connection, and we still hold that connection because that connection is something that Creator, God, Wakia Un, gave to the people, told us how to use it, told us how to treat it, told us how to look at it, and told us how to speak to it. And so these elements, they assist us even in today's society, but we overlook them. Even people that go to church, they sit on the wooden benches. Well, all those wooden benches were alive at one time and came from the forest, and they had given themselves so that you have a comfortable place to sit. So in the native culture, our concept is to see beyond seeing things for more than what they are. So again, that's that intellectual and the intuitiveness. So intellectually, we would see church benches. Intuitively, we would see where those benches came from and recognize what those benches were. And that's the way it is with all life. Even the stones. The stones we call grandfathers because they are all things. They carry a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. And so when we bring those stones after putting them in fire into the sweat lodge, through their breath, when we put the water on the stones and that steam comes up, that's their breath, that's their life. So we can learn, not only learn, but we can heal and know how to heal from these things. So I think when we talk about the elements, we're talking about relatives, because you and I, we have the same mother, the earth. But she's not just our mother, she's also mother to the trees and to all living things. And we all have the same father. So if you and I, and the trees, and the animals, and all of creation have the same mother and father, that would make us brothers and sisters. So that tree that we look at becomes more than just a tree. That's my little sister, or that's my little brother. And they have something that can help me. That's how we get the medicines from the earth. They carry those medicines. So that's that connection, and that's our perception of the natural elements. In communicating with those natural elements, we can work together. So for an example, if we're going to have a ceremony, and the clouds come in and it's black overhead, we can go out and connect and say, can you come back later? We're in an important ceremony. Will you help me? And pretty soon the clouds will part and go around the ceremony, or it might not rain until the ceremony is over. We cannot stop the natural elements, but we can work together. And that's the native connection, the native perception of how to live with the natural elements. I think the final message I would have for the people is not just the native people. See, maybe 15 years ago, all the things that we went through as indigenous people was an indigenous issue. Nobody paid attention except native people, and we were environmentalists. We were calling, protect the water, protect the water, protect the water, protect the mountains, protect the mountains. Well, I think the world is discovering that if we don't protect that water, we are all going to reap the repercussions of that. So it's no longer a native issue. It becomes a world issue. So we have to defend in whatever way that is, whether it's using social media to get the word out, whether it's physically being on the front lines, well, no matter how, we as a native people, as people of the world, we have to take the responsibility and take care of what has been given to us. Otherwise, not only are we going to lose it, but we're going to lose everything. So that's my message. Let's stand together. We don't have to speak the same language because our hearts understand each other. So that's my message to the people of the sea. I'm going to sing it in Lakota, and the word is Palamia. Palamia means thank you. Tonka Shila means grandfather. That's who we're talking about when we talk about the deities. Like in Christianity, you had the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In our native culture, we had the Father, the Son, and the grandfather. So those deities are combined, speaking of the same being. So this is the song saying, thank you, grandfather. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for my life. Thank you for the things you provided. Thank you for the love that we share and those that can share that love. So this is the song. Sheila, Hila Maelo, Hila Maelo, Hila Maelo, Hila Maelo, Hila Maelo, Sheila, Hila Maelo, Hila Maelo. The last thing I'd like to add is that we have to live. And just like the native people, including yourself, we are stuck. And we live in two worlds. We live in the intellectual world and we live in the intuitive world. We must find a balance and be able to walk in both worlds without losing ourselves. So there's a time to be sacred, a time for ceremony, but there's also a time to be a human being, to enjoy life as it is. You don't have to give up things to live a spiritual life. You don't have to stop going to the movie theater to live a spiritual life. You can continue to do what you need to do to find that happiness. Because that happiness is what the balance is all about. Being able to live in both worlds without becoming lost.
Gostou da palestra? Se você chegou até aqui, provavelmente sim. Sou Samuel Souza de Paula, idealizador do XamasConet, Congresso Internacional de Xamanismo na internet, e autor do livro Práticas Bioxamânicas, Despertar das Capacidades Interiores. E é uma alegria saber que está prestigiando este evento, onde grandes condutores xamânicos compartilham as melhores práticas para o reconhecimento do seu poder pessoal, manter melhores relacionamentos, desenvolver sua espiritualidade e ampliar sua consciência com dicas, jornadas, segredos e um conteúdo imperdível. Deseja apoiar e se beneficiar ainda mais com esse projeto? Acesse ao site xamasconet.com.br e informe-se, que as melhores energias cheguem até você. Arro, mantaku yoyasi, por todas as nossas relações.